No one expected the humans to say yes. The Varkari were apex predators from a jungle-covered death world, towering beasts covered in plated scales, with slit-pupil eyes and a taste for live flesh. Their ceremonial feasts were more trial than tradition. It was whispered that attending diplomats who showed fear didn't return home. Sometimes their bones were found artfully displayed in the banquet hall, a lesson to the next species. So when the Varkari High Fong extended an invitation to Earth's first ambassador, the galaxy collectively held its breath. Captain Mira Solen didn't blink. She accepted. And so, in the twilight of the red-misted moon Garceth, beneath towering bonewood trees and the roar of 1,000 distant predators, humanity took its first seat at the predator's table. Mira adjusted the thick collar of her ceremonial armor, carbon steel weaved with synthetic sinew. It looked ceremonial, but it could stop a plasma blade and a Varkari bite. She knew what this was, a test of dominance, respect, and survival. And she was ready. The table was a monolith carved from the skull of a Gorthan Leviathan. Around it sat the Varkari elite, muscles taut, eyes unblinking, jaws twitching with suppressed hunger. No translator droids here, only scent, expression, and the primal language of challenge. The High Fong, Vorgar of the blood-tied claw, gestured with a clawed hand. A raw beast, still twitching, was dragged to the center. Its throat was slit, its blood pooling into ceremonial grooves. Mira stepped forward. She reached in her pack and retrieved her own offering. Smoked wild boar, glazed in honey and laced with crushed ghost peppers. She set it beside the twitching alien meat. Gasps rippled. Not fear, intrigue. Some even sniffed. The High Fong growled low. Earth eats, predators. Mira met his gaze. We are predators. The room fell silent. The first course began. Varkari bit into sinew and cartilage. Mira carved into her boar with slow, deliberate movements. She chewed, swallowed, and nodded in appreciation. Needs more heat, she murmured just loud enough for them to hear. One of the smaller Varkari, barely 8 feet tall, leaned closer. You hunt. We have wolves, tigers, apex hunters, but we also hunt each other when necessary. The beast grinned. It wasn't friendly, but it wasn't hostile either. Other diplomats had trembled at this table. One cried. One fainted. Mira drank thick crimson fluid from a horn, then passed them a silver flask. Try ours. Fermented barley with elder bark, and, she paused, capsaicin. Vorgar drank. His nostrils flared. His throat trembled. Then he laughed, a low, rumbling sound that made the trees around them shiver. Across the galaxy, hundreds of species watched the event via covert feeds. The Etherians whispered in horror. The Tassari scribbled panicked notes. The Krakes simply turned off their screens. But on Garceth, the feast roared on. The second course involved slicing meat off a still-moving lizard whose blood was acidic. Mira, warned in briefings, wore reinforced gloves. She matched the Varkari bite for bite, sweat forming at her brow, but her hand steady. A warrior named Kalrock slammed his claw on the table. You do not flinch, even when the blood burns. Mira's voice was calm. Pain means the food is honest. Kalrock's eyes lit up. He threw back his head and let out a victory howl. Vorgar stood. The table fell silent. He approached Mira, towering over her, breath warm with blood and spice. You were invited to see if your species were prey, he said slowly. But now I wonder. Mira met his eyes, voice steady. Now you wonder if we're hunters like you. A pause. Then Vorgar smiled. Tomorrow, he growled, you hunt with us. Mira nodded. Only if we get to cook after. Laughter thundered through the jungle. As the feast continued into the red night, Mira Solen knew the first part of humanity's message had been received. We do not fear the teeth. We bring our own. And across the galaxy, species who once scoffed at Earth began to reconsider. Not because of our weapons, but because we sat beside monsters and dined like we belonged. Dawn broke blood-red over the jungle moon Garceth. Mist clung to the thick vines, and the distant cries of predators echoed across the canopies. Captain Mira Solen crouched by a fire pit, her hands expertly breaking down a small creature the Varkari had gifted her from their morning hunt. "Strip the sinew," she muttered. "Leave the bone, roast the muscle, sear the edge." Several Varkari warriors observed her, jaws twitching with restrained amusement. One leaned forward and growled. "You cook your kills?" Mira smiled without looking up. "Sometimes. It honors the animal." Vorgar, the high fang, crouched across from her. "To eat raw is to take power from the living. To roast is to soften it." "Not soften," Mira replied. "Transform." With a flick of her wrist, she pressed a button on a portable cooking plate. Flames hissed up. She laid strips of marinated meat across it, and the scent hit the air, a mix of spice, smoke, and wild herbs. The Varkari twitched. Vorgar inhaled deeply. "That smell. It fights. That's earth food," Mira said. "We season with war." The second day of the feast was an ancient Varkari tradition, the trial of sharing. It was a culinary contest and cultural challenge. Species who survived the first night were invited to contribute dishes of their own. Most species failed. Some never showed. Mira stood before the gathered Varkari, holding a wide stone plate layered with glistening strips of glazed meat, each coated with Earth's most aggressive blend of spices. A small dish of red liquid sat beside it. She gestured with one hand. "This is called hellfire glaze. It contains ghost pepper, scorpion chili, and fermented garlic. Eat with caution." Kalrock, the young warrior who had questioned her the night before, stepped forward. "Earth gives warning," he sneered. "Only once," Mira said, deadpan. He took a piece, sniffed it, then bit down. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then his pupils dilated. His nostrils flared. His tail stiffened. A beat later, he dropped to his knees, roaring, not in pain, but exhilaration. "Fire tongue. My blood burns." Vorgar sampled next, more cautiously. A low rumble vibrated in his chest. "This is war made flavor." Mira smiled. "Exactly." Throughout the day, humans and Varkari exchanged more than meals. They traded philosophies. A warrior asked why humans hunted each other in their ancient history. "We needed to learn," Mira said, "to become more than beasts." Another Varkari examined her spice pouch and said, "You craft your food like we craft our blades." Mira handed him a shaker of smoked paprika. "This one's called battle dust." They howled in laughter. As dusk returned, the fire pits lit up once more, and the jungle vibrated with drums. Mira was invited to participate in the Blood Dish Challenge, a formalized rite where guests present a dish designed to provoke, challenge, or impress. Instead of bringing more fire, she brought contrast. Mira presented earth jerky, dry, tough, aged over days. No spice, no flash, just preserved meat and smoke. Kalrock frowned. "It looks dead. Try it." He bit, chewed, and chewed, and chewed. Then his eyes widened. "The power is hidden. It waits." Vorgar chewed slowly, nodding, like a predator lying in the tall grass. Mira simply replied, "We know when to strike fast and when to wait." That night, as the feast neared its end, a strange moment of silence settled around the fire. Mira sat beside Vorgar, watching the flames. The Varkari leader, never one for idle conversation, finally spoke. "You humans, you do not bear fangs with pride. You don't boast. You don't kill to prove. Yet you walk through our rituals like we were the ones being tested." Mira didn't smile. "We faced extinction. More than once. Nature, war, each other. We've learned the difference between power and performance." Vorgar turned to her, truly watching now. "The galaxy thought you prey. I know, but maybe," he paused. "You are the strangest hunters we've ever met." Mira met his eyes. "Good. That means you won't see us coming." A slow, thunderous laugh shook the trees around them. The fire snapped and crackled behind them. The feast would continue through the night. But something had changed in the air. Respect. Hard-earned. Mutual. As Mira drank from a bone-carved cup filled with spicy alien mead, she realized something else. They weren't just surviving the predator's table anymore. They were starting to belong. Night had fallen again over Garceth, but the jungle didn't sleep. The third evening of the feast was known as the Pact Night, a time when alliances were offered often silently, through exchanged dishes. Each course represented a declaration: submission, rivalry, kinship, or war. The Varkari took it seriously. One misplaced bite could start a blood feud. Mira Solen understood the weight of it. She'd studied Varkari traditions with Earth's xenoanthropologists for months, and tonight she wore a thin blade on her hip, not for show, but as cultural etiquette. Among predators, being unarmed was an insult. It meant you didn't believe the other was worthy of danger. She sat tall as the first platters were brought out. Then, without warning, a new delegation entered the firelit clearing. The Tassari. They were lithe, pale-skinned pacifists with wide black eyes and flowing robes. Theirs was a species that loathed violence, revered neutrality, and feared the Varkari with religious fervor. They had not been invited. Mira's eyes narrowed. The Varkari bristled, but Vorgar raised a claw to hold them back. Let them speak. The Tassari emissary stepped forward and bowed. We offer a peace dish, in honor of the unexpected bond between Earth and Garcith. The platter was unveiled, meatless, of course. Colorful petals, rare fruits, and a sticky, fermented paste of Tassari algae. Mira could already smell the chemical sweetness. She took one glance and knew. Poison. Her diplomatic implants quietly scanned the offering. Trace neurotoxins, non-lethal to Varkari, but tailored for humanoids. Subtle, designed to incapacitate or discredit her, maybe both. Vorgar's eyes flicked to her. He knew too, but the challenge had been made. Mira offered no reaction, no fury, no fear. Instead, she calmly slid the platter across the stone table to the Tassari emissary. You first, she said coolly. Earth custom. Guests always taste their own gift. The emissary froze. Every predator at the table leaned forward, eyes glowing in the firelight. The Tassari stammered, then reluctantly took a bite. Within seconds, his expression contorted. He collapsed to his knees, gasping, skin flushing an unnatural blue. Mira stood and addressed the room. We do not start fights, but we never miss an ambush. The jungle was silent. Then Vorgar rose to his full, monstrous height and roared in triumph. Later, the Varkari tended to the sick Tassari, barely. Mercy, in their eyes, was not weakness, but controlled strength. Mira sat quietly while a young female Varkari offered her a ceremonial cloth, a sign of warrior respect. You saw the trap and turned it into a test, the young warrior said. You are sharper than your blade. Mira nodded, but said nothing. Inside, her thoughts churned. Earth had just been targeted. The Tassari feared the human-Varkari alliance. Others in the assembly likely did too, and she just made that fear real. Around the fire, Vorgar approached and sat beside her. No prey would have answered like you did, he said. I wasn't answering, Mira said. I was warning. He nodded. Then let this night be remembered. The predators of Garcith see Earth. We see your restraint, your fire, your cunning. You do not run. You stand and make the jungle quiet. He reached for his belt and removed a single fang, a long, curved, blackened tooth carved with ancestral markings. He placed it in Mira's hand. This is my pledge, Vorgar said. You are not prey. You are kin. A ripple moved through the warriors. A fang offering was sacred. Few outside Garcith had ever received one. Mira bowed slightly and accepted it. Then let this be Earth's answer. She reached into her coat and drew out a simple Earth relic, a smooth obsidian coin, etched with the Terran star and a wolf's head. It had once been carried by the first astronauts. Now, it would belong to the jungle. Our first step, she said, will be forward. Together. Vorgar's smile was full of teeth. That night, the feast changed. The food was the same, wild, bloody, spiced, but the energy was different. No more testing. No more proving. This was the beginning of something else. A bond, perhaps, or a storm. On a screen in orbit, Earth's observers watched in silence. Across the stars, nervous politicians and ambitious generals began redrawing their mental maps of power. Because tonight, a human sat beside a predator king, and they raised their cups in unison. 2 weeks later, the Galactic Assembly convened an emergency session. Representatives from over 200 species filled the tiered, dome-shaped chamber, murmuring in dozens of languages. Holograms spun above them, looping footage of a human seated beside the Varkari high fong, laughing over fire-roasted meat, their eyes gleaming in the glow. The headline in every star system read the same: Earth dines with monsters and leaves with their loyalty. From the central podium, the Tassari representative, pale and still trembling from the poison incident, rose. This alliance is a threat to galactic peace. Humans should never have been allowed among apex predators. They've contaminated them. Whispers followed. Accusations, fear, suspicion. Earth had gone too far too fast. And then the chamber fell quiet. Because Captain Mira Solen had entered. She didn't wear ceremonial robes or flash a polished Earth emblem. She wore dark fatigues with the Garceth thong hanging from a chain around her neck. The jungle's mark of kinship, now plain for all to see. Mira stepped up to the center, voice clear and steady. You misunderstand something fundamental. Earth didn't go to Garceth to dominate or deceive. We want to understand. To be understood. The Krake's delegate hissed. You think walking among beasts makes you one? Mira nodded. We don't think. We know. A beat of silence. Then she continued. You fear our bond with the Varkari because you spent centuries pushing them to the edges of this assembly. You called them savages, barbarians. But you never sat at their table. She raised the black fawn. We did. And in doing so, we earned something you never dared ask for: respect. On Garceth, the final ritual was underway. A vast crowd of Varkari gathered around a new monument, two predator statues side by side. One Varkari, the other human-shaped, holding a fire-bladed spear. Beneath them was carved a single line in the Varkari tongue. Strength sees strength. Vorgar stood before the masses, his voice thunderous. Once we hunted alone, but the jungle is changing. Stars grow crowded. Fangs are no longer enough. We need claws that think, teeth that speak, fire that chooses when to burn. He turned, and Mira Solen stepped beside him. In her hands, she held a sealed stone plate, Earth's final offering. A cooked Garsathi beast glazed in Earth's most subtle spice blend, one that hid its fire beneath sweet smoke. She placed it on the altar. Vorgar raised his voice. Let be known, the blood pact is made. Earth and Garceth now hunt as one. Roars erupted, deep, wild, triumphant. 1,000 voices of jungle-born warriors who now saw Earth not as prey, not as outsider, but as kin. Back at the Galactic Assembly, Mira delivered her closing words. We will not apologize for earning trust through challenge. Earth doesn't seek war, but we will not fear it. And if we're to shape this galaxy together, then let it be through truth and strength, and a table where no one pretends to be what they are not. She turned and walked out, and no one tried to stop her. 2 months later, a Varkari cruiser and a Terran battleship patrolled the edge of disputed space together. When a pirate fleet intercepted a cargo convoy, both predator species answered. The message was short, relayed to the attackers moments before they were destroyed. This route is protected. Prey time is over. In Earth's capital, an enormous Varkari sculpture stood near the Terran Union's diplomatic hall. Children played at its feet, unaware that once their ancestors had feared such creatures. Now, they called them allies. And deep in the Varkari jungles, around fire pits and fanged songs, young warriors spoke the name of Mira Solen in the same breath as their own legends. The one who dined with monsters. The one who fed them peace and spice and stood without shaking. It began as a test, a meal beside beasts. But what Earth left behind was something rarer than blood spilled or weapons fired. They left the table with a brotherhood. Because when humans sat down to dine beside apex predators, they didn't just survive. They changed the menu.